So let me make a short introduction on who we have. I think we have, let's say, very good people to discuss what's happening in open finance. So I will start from Jan. So Jan is working on he has a focus on the innovation side, on Tink, right? Maybe you want to give us a couple of words for you, and then we do the same for the rest of the people.
Sure. So thank you so much for inviting Tink on stage. Jan van Vonno, I'm the research director for Tink, meaning I am responsible for helping us understand the developments in the market. For those who are not familiar with Tink, Tink is an open banking technology platform providing the reals and brains of open banking, reals being AIS services, PIS services, so account aggregation and payment initiation, and then the brains being categorization, machine learning, topped up with some personal financial management that we white label across Europe. We connect 2,500 banks, giving our customers through one API access to 250 million consumers around Europe.
Thank you. Maja from
Hi.
ERSTE.
Hi, nice to be here. My name is Maja Gostovic. I'm coming from George Labs. George Labs is basically a research and development, also an innovation hub that is powered by ERSTE Group. My responsibility within George Labs is to be directly responsible for basically onboarding any third-party developers or in general partners, external partners, with the logic to actually have partners who will support George Labs as well as ERSTE Group to enhance our platform and to also enable the local banks that are working within the cap of ERSTE Group to actually provide services that are so much beyond traditional banking product services, features, and everything else that we have right now. The great thing is that today I recognize that here we have a lot of fintech companies. So with some of them I had a chance to talk already, and hopefully this is going to be a very productive panel, and that later on I will also get in touch with many more of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Roman from Deposit Solutions.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Roman Exenberger. Happy to be on stage, not off stage. Yes, I'm a regional director at Deposit Solutions since 2.5 years. I was joining from UniCredit, have been in banking the last 15 years. And the focus of Deposit Solutions is we're an open banking platform focusing on retail deposits, connecting banks across Europe in order to serve our clients on our own platform. It's Zinspilot in Germany, and our platform in Switzerland, it's Savido, CH. And on the other hand side, we implement our solution white labeled into existing banking platforms like we did with Deutsche Bank 3 years ago, where we implemented our service on a white label basis. We are at the moment enrolling this also across Europe to many other banks, as we announced a couple of months ago, our cooperation with Merck Fink, and happy to be on stage with you guys.
Thank you. Richard, Konsentus.
Yeah, so Richard Saedt, I'm Business Development Manager for the Central Europe region for Konsentus. Konsentus is a RegTech company, a startup company started off in January last year. In a very short time, we've established a wide range of partners and direct clients. Very happy to be part of a MasterCard open banking project as well. Essentially, what we do is we deliver in a plug-and-play SaaS-based API solution for TPP identity and regulatory checking. So we do the KYC for the TPP on behalf of the FI. And it's a very hot topic at the moment as we see the number of PSD2 transactions are rising at the moment. So it's a very interesting time for us. We think we have a very unique end-to-end solution that we're offering in the market. And we see a lot of potential business coming up soon.
Thank you. And we have Maxim, so
Maxim,
who is going
Avdeev,
to give us the...
Pleasure to be here among such prominent projects. So I'm here to represent QIWI platform. It is independent open banking platform from Russia and CIS. At the moment we cover 3 markets. Beside Russia, it's Kazakhstan and Belarus. This project was founded by myself 4 years ago. After 2 years, the major stake was acquired by QIWI company. QIWI is like a Russian PayPal, Nasdaq traded payment service company that's aiming to become ecosystem through open banking initiatives. So that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Look, I would like to start because I see that we have lots of different business models. So maybe the first discussion is, and then we take it around to see. I mean, for me, open banking is about data and about removing, let's say, barriers so that companies can work with each other. So what are the main business models? I mean, there are different representatives here in the panel, and I would like to get your view. What are the main business models that you see erupting from this, let's say, space? What has been going on? Obviously, you have one on your own, and what do you see coming in the future? So maybe we can start, Jan, with you, and then...
Sure. Let's get one thing straight. Open banking wasn't initiated by PSD2. It wasn't initiated by the UK legislation. Tink was founded back in 2012, and back in the day, Tink was already doing account information services on behalf of its customers in Sweden by aggregating account information for its users, providing financial services based on those insights. So open banking by itself isn't a new thing, but I think the business models are evolving as a result of it, specifically because the regulation increases transparency and increases the mandate for banks to exchange information. We see business models ranging from, of course, B2C and B2B, but across the customer journey, from onboarding, improving KYC, digital identity types of services, improving the ability for customers to manage their finances, enabling them to control their payments and invoices, and all the way to the position where a bank can start to become a platform and broker services, not only financial services, but increasingly cross-industry services. So if you look at this industry and how it's evolving, it's quite clear that financial services is no longer going to be the same. It's transforming radically, and I'm really excited to see where it's going to go.
Okay, thank you. Maja, what's the view of ERSTE, who is quite innovative in this space? I think you are also working with third-party developers, so you're in a good position to tell us.
Exactly. So I would also like to tackle a topic also from a bit different perspective. I absolutely agree that it's more about the platformification these days, although I'm not a fan of these buzzwords, but I think that clearly for all of us it's more or less absolutely clear what platformification means in that sense. But what I would like to tackle is also this topic from a bit broader perspective, because when we talk about PSD2, then immediately the first thing that pops to our minds are basically TPPs, license, registration, certificates, all of these things. But what is actually happening with the fintech companies who do not have this license, who are not registered? So are they out of the scope or not? Because from our perspective, and basically from the experience that we at ERSTE George have until this point of time, is that actually a lot of fintech companies that can provide very interesting and very good solutions. And maybe to point out a little bit what would be of our interest is that basically each and every company that can encourage or help us encourage our users to actually understand, improve, and manage their finances, or any kind of additional service on top of their financial services and financial lives, basically would be out of our interest. So that's absolutely clear from our perspective. That would be basically the vision of George Labs when it comes to platformification in general. So when it comes to some specific use cases, maybe I think we'll have an opportunity to tackle them a little bit more. But there can be a lot of nice services that are so much beyond these traditional banking products. Let's say potentially cashback or vouchers business, or I don't know, for example, here in the crowd, we also have a company who deals with subscription management, for example. That would be also a very nice opportunity. So definitely much more beyond, and definitely platformification.
Okay, thank you. Roman, what do you think? And maybe you can also tell us what are the critical success factors. I mean, some of them were mentioned before.
So I think what we see on the banking market is that we could divide, from my perspective, the market in two fields, so to say. So we have on the one hand side, we have the large universal banks, the big players, and they are strictly following, I think, that kind of platformization. On the other hand side, we see, especially if you have a look at the challenger banks, also a lot of banks focusing on one value chain in banking, for example, as consumer finance. We see a lot of banks and a lot of stuff going on here, and basically our platform is trying to connect these two worlds. Having the advantage of a large banking group with all capabilities as you have in banking, and on the other hand side, as said, you have that specialized banks with special needs in consumer finance, factoring business, focusing only on retail business. So I think the banking was always a platform business. I think it's now getting technical. You have, of course, with large banks, they have legacy systems, which of course is a huge effort to go into the direction that needs a lot of capital. I think ERSTE is doing here very well with their, so to say, internal spin-off of George. I think that's a very smart move. Yeah, we see in total, I would say, in every country, we are talking, I would say, to the top 3 banks, and we see a lot of demand. Plus, of course, in Germany, they have a big discussion on the retail banking side to pass on negative interest rates, which impacts our business very, very strongly.
Okay, thank you. I mean, Richard's feedback is probably going to be very interesting because he's the one who is primarily working with banks, so he's targeting, let's say, the traditional institutions. So your experience from this is, is going to be useful to hear.
So yeah, all of a sudden now on the PSD2, the bank has to judge whether to do business with a TPP that's coming into the interface. And it's a very complex call to make. When you have to establish the identity and the regulatory status of a TPP, you will have to access more than 100 plus databases in real time to make that call. So you have the quality trusted service providers for the IDA certificate check. So that's the identity, to establish the identity of the TPP. Then you also have the 31 NCAs and the EBA register you need to check. So it's a very complex situation, and at the same time, you're expected to make a call in real time. You can only refuse in case of fraudulent activities. And that's where Konsentus steps in. We remove the complexity by gathering all this information in our own database, and with a single API, banks can connect to our database. So essentially, our business model is new because of PSD2, and that's why we stepped into this market. So we remove the complexity for the FI, basically.
And I guess this is also affecting the business model of your clients, right? Because now they have to follow a different process in in a part of the value chain, right?
Yeah, so we offer that as a SaaS solution, easy plug and play. So that's a very easy to integrate solution for FIs. And I think that's our success. It's an easy plug and play solution, and we remove all complexity. The only thing that's needs to really get on is still the PSD2 transaction volumes are still low in Europe. I mean, it's going to come. When you look at the UK, last year, UK was ahead of open banking a year ago. The number of transactions, PSD2, was quite low a year ago. And now we just saw, last month, 134 million PSD2 transactions in 1 month. So that's going to come to Europe sooner or later, which means financial institutions have to be prepared for that.
Can I make a comment? So 100 million is, if you put that in context, it's still a very low number. I mean, just looking at Tink, what we process on a monthly basis is multiple X times that number. So one of the key challenges for TPPs today in the context of PSD2 APIs is that many of the APIs actually don't allow for a lot of transactions per second, or a lot of transactions in general, which is creating an interesting bottleneck. Secondly, the number of TPPs that have been able to register, attain a license in order to test these environments and use the APIs are also very low, which means that for any given bank in a country, there are only a handful of TPPs actually using the APIs. So it's actually a really interesting market, and I think there's bottlenecks across different fronts, which is why I wanted to point out again at the start, open banking is not a new concept. Many TPPs have existed for many years, accessing data and delivering value based on that data prior to PSD2 existed.
Yeah, just to react on that, I just had this discussion at lunch with you. When you look at Austria, I mean, there are only 2 TPPs registered in Austria. So you would say, what's the deal with that, right? But there are actually 54 TPPs that can passport into Austria as well. So that's already 56. Then at the same time, when you look at this moment, there are 300 applications for TPPs awaiting approval. So that's coming very soon. Yeah. So although the volumes are low, I expect a dramatic increase in transactions very soon.
It has to do with the maturity of the market, right? So you have not one market, you have several markets. So, the coordination among them is not the easiest one, let's say. You have different implementation methods sometimes, if you take, for example, strong customer authentication. So, I think it's coming. Maybe, Maxim, you can tell us your experience. So you are, let's say, not directly related to PSD2, but maybe there is something going on in your market which is more interesting for us. So just give us your...
Yeah, that's correct. We start our business well ahead of any regulations, timescales, as a reaction on the troubles that we see in the industry, especially the friction of integration between bank and third-party solution. Me personally, I worked for the large Russian bank in R&D, and on one hand. And later, I worked for VC, and the project from our portfolio spent a lot of efforts and investors' money trying to get in the bank, to explain that it could work by bank as a service model, for instance, mobile acquiring, etc. And now we as QIWI platform offering middleware between infrastructure suppliers, banks, insurance companies and brokers, and on top of it, the third-party providers, and we help them to integrate, but not only in technological sense, but also in the business sense. And we have four main revenue streams. The first one comes from outsourcing of R&D activities of the banks outside of top tier, for sure, because the large Russian banks doing everything inside, mostly. So we are outsourcing R&D for QIWI. I'm like an entrepreneur in residence at the moment. And beside QIWI, 5 more commercial banks using our marketplace. They're paying to us subscription fee. They're choosing the innovations, and we help them to integrate instantly because of unifying of data model and mix of services, complementary services around it. So once we've got a match between infrastructure supplier and FinTech, we start to earn revenue sharing fees from this cooperation. We have a lot of examples here. For instance, on the QIWI's infrastructure, we've made a case with largest SME new bank named Tochka. It hosted on QIWI. The third revenue stream comes from cloud infrastructure markup, because all the infrastructure, all the integration are placed in cloud. We are cloud agnostic platform, but we add the markup there.
Maxim, do you see any of this stuff being a bit different from what you heard before, or you see that this is one direction?
I think if we have the relevant regulation in Russia and CIS, and by the way, we are working on it together with Russian Central Bank, it will be much easier to do such kind of business, because as I understand PSD2, right, bank couldn't decline any...
Correct.
Yeah.
So this is what the regulator, let's say, is trying to enable this kind of business. Although, as we said before, I agree that the open banking is before, but now you see the maturity of it. You know, an active effort, let's say, to facilitate this kind of, to open, let's say, the space to other parties as well.
It's still enough to do being just the man in the middle between traditional banks and fintechs in Russia. Because our market is big but still underserved, and people are suffering from inconvenient financial services, and there is no enough fintechs inside Russia because a lot of reasons, lack of financing, etc., etc. And we are aiming to invite the foreign projects to work with us inside our country.
Can I comment on that?
Yes.
Sorry? Because, for example, we have a completely different approach. We are not outsourcing research and development. Actually, George Labs is responsible for research and development. It's a daughter company owned by ERSTE Group. And in our case, for example, we are using the same platform called George in all the countries that actually operate under the cap of ERSTE Group. And from our perspective, it's actually quite good to somehow keep everything more or less in line and all of the major stakeholders on board, like, for example, business, not only from the central units, but also from each and every local bank, as well as IT, for example, because usually it can also happen in this large organization that IT as such is more or less also kind of outsourced. So just would be super happy to know about a bit more of how you actually
too.
deal with that in Russia. So thank you. We'll
Yeah.
catch up on that.
From Konsentus side, we're also looking at Russia at the moment, as we think there are also opportunities for us. So.
Thank you. So I think the second, let's say, topic that would be interesting to discuss is, okay, we are discussing about the business models, but the question would be, okay, what's the difference that these new, let's say, business models have been making or will be making to the end user experience, to the customer experience? Have we seen this? I mean, to what extent have we seen this, and what are the changes that we are expecting to see this? Because at the end of the day, the customer, let's say, doesn't care if it's, my product or if it's your product, so just to get your view on what has been happening so far and what you see happening when the market is maturing a bit more. Jan?
So I'd be happy to start here. I mean, Tink's vision is a world of financial happiness, and we want to do that by providing technology that helps eradicate financial anxiety. This is not just for consumers, but also for businesses. So we want to enable and provide technology and want to enable other businesses, banks, whether it's a financial institution or an accounting software firm or any other fintech or developer, to use the technologies that we provide in order to create that happiness. Happiness is one important KPI. A KPI often reflected in terms of NPS or customer experience and customer satisfaction. But the truth is, if you look across that customer journey and all the aspects and where open banking can make a difference, it is in terms of cost efficiencies by optimizing services, enhancing services, augmenting services, and even cross-selling services. So across the organization, across the value chains, there are incredible sort of milestones to be achieved, I think, thanks to open banking.
But have you seen this happening, or you see we are still at the beginning?
So absolutely. I mean, just looking at how open banking can fetch account name information to accelerate KYC authentication proceedings is already reducing attrition at the point of onboarding. There's one customer of Tink that has seen a 150% increase in terms of conversion at point of onboarding, thanks to these types of innovations. So yes, absolutely.
Maja?
So I fully agree with you that most of the customers would not really care who provides the service, as long as it's on them to actually give an explicit consent for their data to be used. But on the other hand, what we also witnessed in George, let's say, for example, in October, we recognized that we have more than 72 million of logins per month.
Okay.
So taking that into consideration, can you imagine what kind of leverage would there be for any kind of industry, fintech company, or any kind of a partner would be able to position himself in George as a platform instead of actually building up their own app, or maybe they're having it because the frequency of usage when it comes to their app is not even close to that. So I think from the user perspective, it's actually more convenient if you would have everything in one place, especially, for example, again, talking from our perspective, because we are a 200 years old bank who basically gained a lot of trust in the last couple of, I would not say decades, but more than that. So if we are able to actually somehow accumulate all these services that are valuable for the end user, and at the end of the day they can find them in our own platform, that's the platform they already trust. From my perspective, that would be a very good benefit, not only for a user, but also for George, and at the end of the day also for a partner.
And at which stage do you think that we are at the moment? Again, at the beginning, or do you think that maybe in your case is a bit more mature, or what's the...
Well, I always somehow like to leave to other people to judge on what we are doing. So far, so good that the numbers are showing that. So basically, they're working on our behalf. But in general, to be really frank, I think that all of us in general are not that far away yet. If we really want to be frank to ourselves, I think that this is really just the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Roman, what's your experience?
So basically, we have three clients. We have the retail depositor, and for them, our platform enables the retail saver, so to say, to have access to various of deposits with only one account. So that makes people, I think, happy. In average, if you look at Austria, for example, retail clients have 3 to 4 deposits, and therefore, I think it definitely makes sense to have a look at this solution where you enable client with having with one account having different product access.
Would have this been possible without open banking?
I think we are not. If your question comes to PSD2, no, saving deposits are not regulated under the PSD2.
Correct.
So yes, we're playing around with that funny buzzword, but it's not
So-
formalistically part of PSD2 to be very precise on
So
that.
in your case, actually, you have a regulation which most of the people here in the audience would think that it's working, let's say, your way, but at the end of the day, is not making the impact that we would expect you to have, right? So it has not been affecting your business model, and at the end of the day, the end customer experience, in a way that makes a difference, right?
Yes, I think so. And as said, we have three clients, and for the banks, we divide between deposit-taking banks, so banks which take on liquidity from our platform or through other channels we have, like Deutsche Bank or Fink, for example. And then we have banks which pass on liquidity. So why it makes sense for banks to pass on liquidity? Just to open and give clients access to third-party products. I think this is the last product class in banking where we see it makes sense to offer third-party business. And for banks which take on liquidity, it could make sense to use such a platform to have access to different kind of markets where you have no retail network, or you are a bank and have no retail network, or you have a bank, you're a bank which has a small retail bank network, and then it could make sense to tap into that kind of different markets. So I think in terms to come back to your wonderful picture of happiness, so I think for all three of that client types, it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Richard, your take?
Yeah, so I think sharing the data is one of the biggest challenges to get customers to share their data, especially in the Netherlands, where I come from. There's a lot of hesitant about sharing data, and we help by providing a service that the FI only provides data to regulated entities. So we're part of the change, but I think that's one of the biggest challenges of PSD2.
But I think there was, it was mentioned before in one of the presentations, we were talking about transparency, right? Have you seen the customers, let's say, so if you're transparent on the customer and you say, I'm going to be using your data for this and this reason, right? And he says, yes. Is there an expectation to get something on top in terms of customer experience because he's providing his data? So at some point I've seen this, particularly with the younger, let's say, generation, they are willing to share their data as long as they're getting an improved customer experience, either in terms of proposals or in terms of new products, let's say. Do you see this the same way?
Yeah,
or?
at the end of the day, it's about a better financial outcome for the customer. I mean, that's the objective, what the customer wants, and that's what we can achieve. But we need to be able to get access to the data and get determine patterns in behavior, get insight in the health of the customer. All these things you need to know before you get to that stage. So that's the challenge.
Okay, Maxim.
Yeah, for me it's crucial to support the people-centric approach here, and for example, we're trying to redefine how people consume the financial services. For me, it doesn't matter would it be a financial company or not financial, and there is one remarkable case, recent case, that Facebook launched Facebook Pay, and among all the services inside Facebook ecosystem, WhatsApp, Instagram, people can consume financial services using payment suppliers, etc. And in Russia, one more example, customer acquisition. QIWI Bank didn't manage to reach migrants as a client segment, and we organized a partnership between QIWI as infrastructure suppliers and the people who control the immigrant stream, but they don't have financial infrastructure, and because of this match, they became the possibility to earn money from the traffic. That's a good example for me, and for sure, the frictionless customer journey in all the chain, if you working with consent of end users, it's good.
Okay. We're running out of time, but I have one more question, so if we can try to be quick just to answer this. I think would be good if we could try to mention something on the ecosystem. So do you see this, there is a lot of discussion around, creating ecosystems and trying to combine, let's say, services from different players and, having the customer benefit from this, let's say, concept. Do you see this coming? To what extent have you been doing initiatives which are similar? And, very quickly, what do you see in this space?
Yeah, so ecosystems are evolving in every single industry, and Tink wants to be enable ecosystems to help develop in the financial services industry. So what we do is we have provided a platform with one single API that gives access to all PSD2 and non-PSD2 data across Europe. So this ecosystem is evolving, and we're currently serving over 4,000 developers on our platform today. So it's growing, and it's growing fast.
Thank you.
Well, I basically already mentioned the platform as such. So I think that when we are mentioning the ecosystem, we are anyhow developing in that direction. But in general, I think it will also take a bit more time until we actually reach the point where we can say that building up the real ecosystem, especially if you want to think in, for example, of a marketplace, for banks it's going to be a bit more difficult, because let's say a lot of our competitors are actually either the challenger banks or the other banks as such. So a bank as such can also have a TPP license, and they can also offer some services. Should we actually allow another bank to offer the competitive service that we are already offering and potentially maybe jeopardize our own business? So I think that's the question that we'll have to answer in the future.
Thank you. Roman, what do you think?
So we enable banks to be part of that kind of ecosystem, as we did with a lot of partners we have already on the platform. We see, as said at the beginning, a lot of demand, and I think this is where we will go in the future. As said, I think in the center should be the client, and that's what the client is looking for a good service and access to a product base. So yes, we definitely are in that game as a company.
Thank you,
I
Richard.
think for all stakeholders are interesting opportunities to go for. I mean, obviously the TPPs can now get into the FI to get their data for free. And on the other hand, the banks can now offer premium APIs to get for mortgage accounts, for other types of business models. So I think there are opportunities for all stakeholders in the landscape at the moment.
Thank you. Maxim?
Yeah, I really trust and hope that we will have a world with full of collaborative economy. I support sharing economy, and we will do our best to develop any kind of cooperation that we could.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we're out of time. We're 2 minutes short. So not sure if we have time for, if there is, do you have any time to take one question, or so we take only one. So if anybody has one question, if not, then we, okay. Thank you very much. That was a very interesting discussion. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.